In the U.S., Donald Trump is facing Nikki Haley in the New Hampshire primary today. The former president and the former UN ambassador are the last two standing in that race to get the Republican nomination this year, with Donald Trump still far ahead. And as the voting is getting underway today, let's bring in Lawrence Douglas, an author, podcaster, and U.S. politics specialist who joins me now live from Massachusetts. So, Lawrence, thanks so much for joining us today. What do you think will come out of this primary in New Hampshire today?
I mean, it's a little bit hard to predict. I mean, obviously, if Nikki Haley is going to have any possibility whatsoever of mounting a serious challenge to Trump, it's absolutely essential that she wins in New Hampshire. And I say that because New Hampshire has a somewhat unusual procedure in that the people who vote in the Republican Party need not be registered Republicans. You can be what is called an undeclared or an independent voter. And if you're an independent voter in New Hampshire, you can still vote in the Republican Party. And about 40% of New Hampshire residents are actually independents. And so to the extent that Haley is trying to basically attract people who are not kind of diehard MAGA supporters, we'll see if she's able to attract a substantial number of these independent voters.
Right. And she had been polling well going into New Hampshire, much better than she was in Iowa. Now that Ron DeSantis is out of the race, what does that change in this dynamic? Will that help Nikki Haley or hurt her?
I mean, I would imagine it would help her. I mean, DeSantis, as we know, he already then rather cravenly backed Trump. But presumably now it's just a kind of a two-person field. And to the extent it's a two-person field, then there's kind of less distractions for voters. And so they really can make the choice as to, do we want to continue with our leader, Trump, for better or worse, or do we want to try to turn the Republican Party a little bit back or maybe forward in a more positive direction?
Has Donald Trump been changing the way he has been campaigning this way around in regard to this particular race today in New Hampshire?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump has almost been a kind of an absentee candidate in New Hampshire. He spent very little time in the state. Most recently, he's kind of like flown in to do these campaign rallies, and he does have support from, a number of other Republicans who were first vying to unseat him as the Republican nominee, but now have kind of fallen in line supporting him. So, Donald Trump doesn't seem to have to do a tremendous amount in order to keep that passionate MAGA base supporting him.
So you think even things like the criminal cases against him or the worries about his state of mind, for example, making those comments that Nikki Haley was Nancy Pelosi, do you think things like that could ever stop Donald Trump?
It seems like the criminal cases do not seem to have any kind of effect, at least in terms of his popularity among his base. Now, again, we have there's a lot of time between now and November, assuming that he's the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. And it would remain to be seen whether voters at large would be turned off by the fact of a nominee who had been, let's say, convicted, if it comes to that, in the criminal cases. But up until now, he's actually been able to make the criminal charges against him into a pretty potent form of fundraising and of rallying his base, of basically kind of communicating the message that this is, another one of these Democratic witch hunts against him. And then again, he turns it around and says, it's not against me, it's against you people. And so again, he kind of makes himself the embodiment of all the grievance of his supporters.
Just to explain it a bit more to our viewers, if you will, Lawrence, so let's say Nikki Haley loses, she'll still walk away with some delegates. Why is that important, and does it really mean anything in the long run?
I'm not sure if it means all that much. I mean, the number of delegates that's at stake in this particular New Hampshire primary is 22. The number of delegates needed to secure the Republican nomination is 1,215. So again, New Hampshire is more of a symbolic thing than it is anything that has a real determination in terms of the outcome of the Republican nomination. I think the most important thing would be momentum. So if she does better than expected, obviously if she wins, then it creates at least some momentum. We'll have to see whether that momentum carries forward into the next primaries. I mean, one of the next primaries after New Hampshire is February 24th in South Carolina. We need to bear in mind that Haley was the governor of South Carolina. So that becomes also almost kind of a referendum as to whether she can win her own state. So I think a lot of it has to do with momentum rather than in terms of the actual number of delegates that's at stake in this particular primary.
And just to wrap up, just a quick question on the Democrats and Biden's strategy at this point and a bit of counter programming. He's actually holding a rally tonight in Virginia with his VP, Kamala Harris, to discuss the threat Republicans would pose to abortion rights if they win back the White House. Is that a good strategy?
It seems to be an effective strategy. I mean, one of the things that he has been communicating, which I think it is an important message, but I'm not sure it's one that resonates with the American people because they've been so fatigued by claims that Trump represents basically an existential threat to American democracy. So I think talking about actual political issues such as abortion might be a more effective strategy for Biden than simply rehashing the argument, which again, it's a powerful argument, but unfortunately some people might be tired of it, that it's important to vote for Biden because otherwise we're looking at the collapse of 200 plus years of constitutional democracy in the United States.
Lawrence, thanks for that. Lawrence Douglas there speaking to me from Massachusetts. Thank you.
My pleasure.